Do you want behind the scenes access? Today is the day. Also, we have a fantastic interview with my friend Angel Jacobs, who is like the face now of 222 Disciple. Let's get started. All right, so for the topic for today, before we dive into it, Jake, I just want to find out, how was your Easter? I mean, we just went through the Easter season here. What were the highs? What was the lows?
It was fantastic, I think.
Okay.
I think as far as like church service goes, we had, fantastic amount, turnout, people coming in.
So we had services here and,
all of the pictures turned out amazing too. Rosie, one of our photographers that we have here, fantastic. She edited it all. It was great for me. And then I got to spend time with my family afterwards, so it was nice.
That's great.
And the weather was fantastic too.
That's great.
How about you?
Now, my Easter was good. I had a great Easter. Nice. I feel like, as you said, the church services we had here went well. They went well on our other campuses also, which is great. And I just feel a lot of momentum in our ministry overall. And one of the things, just prior to Easter, we celebrated these baptisms. And I was personally struck, on here we're talking about disciple making. How many of the people that we baptized have a connection with our disciple making system, and how wonderful that is. So I just feel there's a lot of momentum going in our ministry now, in disciple making and a whole number of different areas. So Easter was a good time. Tell me, kind of conversation here. Mm-hmm. In your own disciple making now, I know you've taken on someone new. How's it going?
It's great. I started discipling Ethan a few weeks ago.
Right.
We're about like 2 or 3 lessons in. We had to miss a week. He was sick and stuff, which is, that can happen. But it's great. And, the fact that like I've known him since, he was in like Sunday school, I think, when I started.
I know.
Meeting him and like knowing him and stuff. And, I've known his mom and sister and all that. So seeing him kind of grow up around the church and be around and then being able to now pour into it even deeper. Going through the Bible and like just teaching him like essentially how to preach the gospel more like effectively, I think. I even told him, I was like, a lot of this stuff, like you hear us talk about it all day, every day, all the time. Like that's at the core of what we do.
Right.
And so having him like know it already, it really helps me.
Yeah, and you have another disciple, Josh. I mean, he's a rock star. He's discipling people left and right. I think we have an announcement for him when we go to our next segment.
Oh, yeah.
New disciple he's just taken on. So anyway, it's all good stuff. I've got some new disciples as well, which is going really awesome. Another thing that I'm excited about is some of the new people that I'm discipling. So anyway, hey, let's get into the topic for today. What I wanted to do for people, there'll be people who are really familiar because they're part of our system. And then there's people who are listening in and they hear us talk about this discipleship system, but they've never taken a tour. So this is almost a behind the scenes look at our website and how it works. When you first go to our website, of course, if you were to go there, and maybe what I'm going to do, I'm logged in right now. I'm going to log out just so that people could see what it looks like. Unless you have someone who's your mentor, you'll be confronted with login credentials, and you cannot just create login credentials. This is, in a way, you have to have someone who's going to disciple you to even enter into this website. Now, up here at the top where it says begin your journey, if you don't have someone and you've been listening in, you say, I really want to become part of this. You can go there, click through. There's a process that we go through where finally we match you with someone who will train you so that you can begin training others. And if there's people who are listening, just encourage you, that'd be the place to start. Now, for those of us who are in the system, because someone's taken us on, you know what it looks like, but to a certain extent, this is now for people who don't know what it's like behind the scenes. I'm just working on logging in here again, Jake. What we're going to wind up doing now is seeing this is how the landing page looks when you get into 222 Disciple. The first thing that's going to come up is a number of courses that you could take. And we have there Introduction to Discipleship, Introduction to the Gospel, Introduction to Christianity, and then Bible Steps. Maybe I'm going to go to the network view. Maybe this is, this site kind of serves two purposes. The first is so that you can have some sense of not only who around you is being discipled, some of that, but then also you get a sense of your own legacy. So when I go to network, I'm going to be able to see right away there's 49 people that I've discipled over the years who are a part of this system. And I see those people right away. And then there are 667 descendants who are here. And so even, we're going to have the tipping point in just a minute. There's even more people who, we cut it off every week. There's even more people who have joined. This is constantly growing. But you can get some sense of these descendants. Actually, we have this view network tree view that I think is really helpful. It starts with you, and then the people that you've discipled, and then there's a line, and then there's the people that they have discipled, your descendants, that they've directly discipled, and then there's another line. Then there's a group of people that they've discipled, so the disciples of your disciples, this is the people that they've discipled. We're now on like the 4th generation down. Then there's a line of 5th generation down, and then yet again another line of 6th generation, even a 7th generation. We talked about that last week. We were into the 7th generation. But here, let me just, as an example, let me take Aaron, okay? So we'll click on Aaron. And now we can go to his network. We see that he has 5 disciples and 17 descendants. But I'm just going to click on you, Jake, because here we are. And when I go to your network, and I'm just going to view the tree view here so that we have some sense of what your network looks like. Here's Josh and then Ethan, the people that you've discipled, and then now below that is the people that they've discipled, all the names. And so, any person who's in this starts to get some sense of the impact that their disciple making is having on other people. And of course, I know that you've discipled other people besides Josh and Ethan, but those are the ones that are formally in the system here. And you have some sense through 222 of who those people are. Anyway, that's on the network side. And everyone who comes into this will start to be able to see their legacy. Also, I just want to show you in the courses here how that works. You can see the courses, and as an example, if you go to Introduction for Christianity, you can see all the lessons that we have. Each lesson, so the lesson that came up here first is Sin is Lawbreaking, comes with a handout as well as a series of videos that show. And here's the idea. People don't come to this site to learn the lesson. If I was teaching you, I would teach you the lesson. And then afterward, I'm going to give you access so that not only when you go to teach someone else, do you have, the memory of what we talked about, along with a handout that I gave you, but now you also have a resource. And, here's the purpose. This telephone game, a message always corrupts over generations. But here, no matter how far down in the chain you are, you could be at the 7th generation. You can always sort of come back to the lesson the way that we recorded it. Because, Jake, you were there when we recorded all these lessons. Anyway, that's a little overview. And it's a whole system set up so that people can easily multiply. What I've learned from someone, I can pass on to someone, and I can teach them to become a disciple maker who can teach them to become a disciple maker, and so on and so on. Anyway, I wonder if you have any thoughts just knowing the kind of system we have. And, this is a little behind the scenes for people who might not get behind the scenes. Any thoughts, Jake?
Yeah, I love it. It holds me accountable to making sure I got it right.
Yeah.
But I always tell Ethan, we talk about it all the time, that there's no real set way to disciple somebody.
It's just you're in a relationship with someone. You're teaching them the structure of Christianity. You're learning together. Every person you grow with, I think.
Yeah. So I did it differently between Josh and Ethan. And so for Ethan, I always tell him hey, watch this video. Let's afterward, we'll re-talk about it next week or whatever.
Yeah.
But tell me if I got anything wrong. I always have him correct me just in case. And I love it because it holds, like you said, it allows us to keep that information,
Yeah. And
towards
yeah,
the
now
same
of course
goal.
the trick, as you've done with Josh, you'll do with Ishlin, I'm sure, is get him discipling someone.
I told him that already.
Teach him. He's got to, teach that person to disciple. Anyway, that's how our system's multiplying. It's multiplying all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, that's the topic for today. Let's move on to the next segment, the tipping point. Here we go. For the tipping point today, we are pleased to welcome 7 new disciples into our disciple multiplying system. Dan Dixon, Linda Wellesby, David Murray, and Jerry Lloyd. Dan is being discipled by Chris Voss, David Murray by Jean Gomez, Linda Wellesby by Pam Torr, and Jerry Lloyd by Josh Zettler. Those are the first 4. Then Angus Murray, Kaylee Jones, and Bill Dunham being discipled by Jean Gomez for both Angus and Kaylee, and Andy Peterson for Bill Dunham. To each of you who are brand new to our system, we want to welcome you. We're so glad that you have begun your discipleship journey to really get to know Jesus, and with the goal of making Jesus known and really living your life in accordance to his great commission. For all of you who are investing in people who are making disciples, thank you. Great job. We're just super excited about what God's going to do in each and every one of these relationships. Special shout out to Andy Peterson, who's a first-time disciple maker. This is a big move when you go from being a receiver, you've been discipled, to now being a giver. You're a disciple maker. So Andy, congratulations. Thank you. And for Al Scott, first-time multiplier, also a big move. When one of your disciples that you've been investing in now turns around and makes a disciple themselves, you've unleashed something. Something is beginning to happen in the ministry that God's given you. And so, Al, great job. Super proud of you. This brings the total number of disciples to 712. So we keep growing every single week. It's exciting. Great job, everybody. Now we're on to ordinary people. Let's go. All right, want to welcome to the show my friend Angel Jacobs. We're glad that you're here. Angel actually now works for 222 Disciple, and so we're going to get talking about that. But I think I'd like to start just by having people get to know you a little bit. Angel, welcome. Would you mind just by starting, tell your story a little bit. How did you become a Christian? And tell us your story a little bit.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. So I was born in Las Vegas, in the United States. And early on, my family was very unique. I came from foster care, actually. And when I was 4 years old, my parents adopted my sister and myself. And so we grew up with them and really had a blended view of religion, holidays. My mother is Jewish,
Right?
And my father grew up Catholic. So there was a lot of little sharing of those two cultures and religion, but really not practicing.
Okay.
And I always remember I had a book from a daycare that I got put in because all of a sudden my parents became parents. And so I was in a daycare that was actually at a Catholic church.
Okay.
And I remember this book that was given to me, and it had Jesus all throughout the book. And it was Jesus with the children. And my parents never read me the book. They never read anything that was inside of it. But I always remember being drawn to it, and the pictures, and all throughout my childhood having that. I still have that book to today. And I remember as I became a teen kind of thinking, what's the purpose of life? Those classic questions that we go through, and knowing my identity. A lot of times in school, you'll have to do projects where you'll have the family tree. And I always had that struggle because of my upbringing. And I here and there met different Christians through my childhood, and I was always drawn to how compassionate and kind they were, no matter what type of people. And I remember kind of going through wondering, well, how do you know which one is right? With all these, with all the feelings and views out there. And something didn't sit right with me on the truths. I'll say truths on evolution. It just didn't sit right and didn't logically make sense to me, but kind of didn't know. So I researched a lot of things. For a time, we went into Unitarian Universalists. I thought that was very interesting and just the concept, but participating in that for over a year, I did love that sense of belonging and a group and, all kinds of people joined together. So as I look back on that, I could see so many reasons, how God was, helping me see what were things that we do have in being in his family. And I believe that God uses all things for his purpose and plan. And that for me was that turning point was, can I trust God with this? And I said, all right, I'm going to step out. I went, had some conversations with some people who ran a home for young pregnant girls, and some were like 14 to like 18. And the compassion that they had and the truth that they could go to in the word and say, this is the reality of your situation. And, we're here, we can help you. It's up to you and your choice. And what really, I think, helped my decision, which is a bittersweet for me, is 9/11. I was pregnant. I was in an abusive situation. And this innocent child, really was going to come into a situation. And I said, you know what? There are so many families right now suffering and loss. I want to do my best that I can. And that might not be what I have right now. So I did a complete surrender of my situation to God, and I just asked him for help. So I moved into that program, and the first night there was a Bible study, and a pastor, he was talking and he was reading through John, and at the end of it, he looked right at me eye to eye, and he knew through the way I was looking and the questions I was giving, and just the whole explanation of who Jesus is hit me, and I realized this is the answer to all those questions. This is the who. This is the what. This is that man in that little book. That is a constant. Is full of compassion for everyone, and that was the beginning of very fast growth, because I had.
So that's really in this home for expecting mothers is where really Jesus grabbed hold of you.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And becoming a parent and so many things through that experience as well, learning about him as a father and a father to the fatherless, and so many verses that for my situation applied, and I just was absorbing them and felt that confidence that we have in knowing this is an absolute truth, because we can read and see all that has been written, and we see in our world, we see the evidence of it, we see the evidence of his creation, we see the truth of his word all around us. And so I knew I could stake my life on it.
Yeah. That's great. Now, I don't mean to fast forward, but fast forward a little bit because, of course, I didn't know you then. We met some years later. Actually, you and your husband, Travers, along with your children, live just a few houses down from us, where Andrea and our family, where we live. And at that time, of course, you had become a Christian, and I think you and Travers, you had really dedicated your life to serving Christ. And when we first met you, you were part of another church. And that was great. I mean, we knew each other as neighbors, and I think started a friendship then. But, this is at least my perception, that at some point you and your husband, as God kept working in your lives, you started sensing almost a call into ministry, not quite knowing exactly what that was going to look like, whether it was church planting or just exactly what. But over the course of time, you've eventually become part of our church here. And I know my wife then took you on as one of her disciples in 222 Disciple, and you've started discipling people. Maybe you could just reflect a little bit on that. Eventually now, I've taken your husband as one of my disciples, and I'm super excited about what God is doing in your guys' life. So maybe just talk a little bit about your experience of discipleship in 222 Disciple, and as you've started to disciple people too. I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, so what we had experienced through, like you said, ministry over the years, I went from a 20-year-old to soon now 40-year-old being discipled and always looking for Paul and Timothy. We know in everything there's scripture to base what we do, how we do discipleship, how we live. And so we were so excited to experience 222, and immediately I want to jump all in. And my husband says, let's just make sure and dot everything and cross and all that. But, I have just seen my own experience of being discipled early and having a one-on-one person in the home. It was weekly, it was devotions. I ended up working for that center. I graduated the program, and then they hired me. And so I have seen how much of a difference it makes when somebody takes you along through your life, wherever you're at, in whatever season.
The power of personal relationships.
And that is exactly what 222 does. And it is not based on your own experience speaking into that person's life only. It is scripture based.
That's right.
And making sure that it's the absolute truths that we should know foundationally as believers, and going through it. And Andrea, I love that, the first 6 lessons are all about sin, and there's no getting around it. And she's like, "Are you okay?" every week, asking me, "Are you still okay?" Because it's a lot, but it's what we need. It's what we need to face, is that, we're all in the same place. It's level at the foot of the cross. But we can arm in arm with each other through this journey. And that's what I've enjoyed representing with 222 as now a mentor, discipling others. And what's beautiful is seeing when you surrender and you really pray and you ask God to help you be that best mentor for who you're discipling. He does show up. And he allows you to say something or bring a verse that you said, this is a verse that supports what we're talking about. And that could be a verse that person had been looking at that day or
Right.
a week before, and you can see that God is alive and he's active and his spirit can show up like that. Not that it's not always there, but that we could see it in a moment is such a blessing. And so seeing that and having that a part of your week, it's I mean, I think you have shared with Travis, it's like the best part of your week.
Right.
You can be real with the person as well, and just talk about life and say, this and that about where you're at, what you want to focus on, what you're vulnerable to, to not like to read or not like to follow, and that person can be there and pray for you. It's been a beautiful thing as well to be able to look at younger generations. So one of my disciples is younger, and really let them know that there's a lot of noise as the generations continue on where their identity lies. And I enjoy knowing that there's the concept in 222 of a Paul and a Timothy is celebrated, and I believe that's changing the culture of our church and the churches that are participating in it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, I'd like to kind of move the conversation this way now too, because one of the things, you're such an enthusiastic person with such a great story about the power of God in your life. And I think, you bring a lot of passion and skill to become really now a public face for 222 Disciple. And so when people first connect with us now, more likely than not, the first person they're going to meet is you. And so I'd like to just have you talk a little bit about some of your hopes and dreams as you begin to talk with people. And of course, you see how many people are joining this multiplication movement all the time. You're often the first face. If people have questions, more likely than not, they're going to connect with you. Just talk a little bit about, your new role and some of the things that you hope and dream about here.
So now being able to produce and think of the best ways to answer questions, ways to be there along the process and check in, and for both people, for the mentor, if they need more support, they need encouragement, they need prayer. If we continue to follow the model of that Christ gave us, so often when his power was needed, he went off and he prayed. So, keeping that as very, very top on the priority list guides my week and guides when I sit down and I'm going to talk to someone or think through helping somebody match up or think about discipling somebody is pray about it. Stop and be still and know that we can do nothing in our own strength, and he can bring people to mind that should be matched together. And so I've already seen so many amazing things that have changed people, grown people, just helping people feel that somebody sees them. Mm-hmm. Somebody sees where they're at. And for them to have a place to really be heard, to know, we're all at a as we join, we're all in. I love that you have the chain reference. We become that link. We're all a link in that chain. My big dream is that our generations will get stronger and stronger. because we know where we're going. We know, it's for Christ's sake that we can do this. It's a humbling place to be, to know that it can change how it has changed our lives and already, and can do for others. It's just exciting to know that we'll be able to be a part of people gaining strength, finding out their giftings. That's another big one. I think just all the beautiful ways that Scripture helps us see, our purpose, what He has for us, and just arm in arming, I think, is a great legacy.
Yeah.
To leave and make sure that, and it's in the model, our children, the younger generations, we're training them to
That's
be
right.
disciple makers.
You know what I love about this is that just ordinary, everyday people are just empowered by God to do these extraordinary things in a community of people who are just going hand in hand. And anyway, I love your enthusiasm. You are a point of contact now for so many people who are coming into this movement. I'm just grateful for where God's got you, and thankful for how God's using you. Anyway, I want to thank you for joining us today, and for everybody, we're glad that you're here, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to the Disciple Standard Podcast. We're so glad you joined us. We encourage you to continue the conversation by joining us on social media. Also, if you want to learn more about the Multiply method or learn about how to take the Multiply pledge, we encourage you to join us on our website at multiply222.com. Have a great day.